Part 1 Prologue. Our past. People always loved Emma. Even when we were little, they gravitated toward her the way flowers lean into the sun. She was the golden child, quite literally. Blonde curls, dimples when she smiled, and a laugh that made strangers stop and look. I was the older sister, the quieter one, dark-haired, reserved, the responsible one. That was how they described me when they wanted to be kind. I remember standing in the doorway once, watching Mom brush Emma's hair before a school recital. Slow, gentle strokes like she was handling something precious. She cooed at her. "So beautiful, my Emma." I must have been 9. I remember running my fingers through my own tangled hair that night, sitting on the edge of my bed, wondering why she never looked at me that way. We were different from the start. Emma loved attention, I preferred silence. She danced in the living room, I read books in corners. She wore lipstick by 14, I barely knew how to braid my hair. But the thing is, I didn't resent her. Not then. She was my sister, and I loved her. I think I even admired her, the way a quiet girl might admire a storm, fascinated and a little afraid. High school only made the differences louder. Emma was everywhere, captain of the dance team, homecoming queen, always surrounded by a swirl of friends and boys and drama. I was the designated driver, the one who reminded her to take her allergy pills. I helped her sneak in after parties so Mom wouldn't ground her. Everyone thought I didn't mind. I did. But I was too used to being overlooked to say anything. After graduation, she left for college in California on a cheerleading scholarship. I stayed in-state, studied computer science, worked nights tutoring kids whose parents barely noticed me. Emma would call sometimes, usually when something exciting happened or when she needed money. I always answered. Always said yes. Then, during my final year, I met Marco. He was magnetic, dark, intense, the kind of man who looked at you like you were the only person in the room. He told me I was beautiful, even without makeup. No one had said that to me before. I let myself believe him. And when I told him I was pregnant, he kissed my forehead and said, "We'll talk later." Then he left and never came back. I never told Emma the full story. Just that he was gone. She barely blinked. Said, "Well, you always were too trusting." Maybe she was right. But I was also too tired to argue. Leo was born on a gray Tuesday. No father. No flowers. No visitors. Just me and a nurse with kind eyes who held my hand when the contractions became unbearable. My mom said she was busy helping Emma prepare for a modeling audition. She sent a text, "Proud of you. Hang in there." That was the last time I cried. Raising Leo taught me how to be still. My world became smaller, more focused. Diapers, freelance contracts, sleep-deprived nights. There was no room for self-pity. But in that small world, I found something that Emma never had, something real. Every time Leo laughed, every time he reached for me in the dark, I knew who I was. I wasn't invisible anymore. Not to him. Meanwhile, Emma's life looked like a highlight reel. She bounced from one glamorous job to another, social media manager, then fashion blogger, then brand ambassador. Her Instagram was a collage of curated moments, champagne brunches, designer heels, beach selfies with inspirational captions. I rarely saw her in person, but when I did, she'd talk a mile a minute and barely ask about Leo. Then came Daniel. Emma called me one night, breathless. "He's different," she said. "He listens. He's calm. He's not like the others." I met him once at our parents' anniversary dinner. He was polite, well-dressed, and surprisingly quiet. When he spoke to me, he actually asked about Leo, what grade he was in, what he liked to draw. No one ever asked me those things. I remember thinking, he doesn't seem like Emma's type. But I kept that thought to myself. When the wedding invitation arrived 6 months later, heavy envelope, gold-trimmed with real pressed jasmine inside, I felt a knot form in my chest. I didn't want to go. Not because I didn't care, but because I knew how it would feel. Emma would be the star, and I would be what I've always been. The background. Cautionary tale. Don't end up like Lina. But Leo found the invitation on the kitchen table. A wedding, he asked, eyes wide. Like with a big cake and dancing? Something like that, I said. Can we go? And just like that, the decision was made. I bought a simple navy blue dress, ironed his little button-up shirt, and rehearsed my polite smiles in the mirror. I told myself I could survive one evening, one performance. What I didn't know, what none of us knew, was that the stage Emma built for herself would be the very place her curtain fell. Part 2, the wedding day. The hotel was too bright. That was my first thought as I stepped through the grand glass doors with Leo's small hand wrapped tightly in mine. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceiling like frozen fireworks, and a string quartet played something delicate and romantic near the lobby entrance. Everything smelled like roses and money. Leo tugged my sleeve. "Mom, this place is like a movie." I smiled, brushing invisible dust from his shoulder. "Don't touch anything sticky." The ballroom was already full. Waiters in black vests carried trays of champagne and truffles. Every table was dressed in white linen, with tall vases of white roses and golden name cards shaped like butterflies. I spotted my parents across the room, Dad in an old tuxedo he only wore for weddings and funerals, Mom in a silver dress 2 sizes too young for her. Neither of them waved. Typical. Emma hadn't walked in yet, but her presence already filled the room. I heard her name in the air like perfume. Emma looks stunning. Have you seen her dress? Daniel is so lucky. Leo leaned close. Do you think she'll let me hold the rings? She already has ring bearers, baby, I said softly. Let's just enjoy the cake, okay? He nodded, slightly disappointed, then immediately became fascinated by the shrimp cocktail on the appetizer table. I kept close to the wall, sipping sparkling water, smiling when spoken to but not lingering in conversations. I knew how this would go, polite nods, sideways glances. Some people remembered I was Emma's sister, the one with the child and the absent boyfriend. A few smiled too kindly, like they were congratulating me just for being presentable. One woman whispered to another, "She used to be so bright in school before the baby, you know." I looked at Leo. He was sitting neatly in his chair, swinging his legs and quietly playing with the butter packets on the table. My bright light was sitting right there. Then the music changed. Everyone turned. Emma entered like she belonged to another world. She wore a Vera Wang gown that looked stitched from starlight. Her hair was swept up with soft golden curls falling perfectly into place. Daniel stood at the altar, clean-shaven and solemn in his navy suit, his hands folded like he was about to break something. Emma didn't look at me. She never did, really. The ceremony was brief and beautiful, vows exchanged under a canopy of orchids and silk. Emma cried, but I wasn't sure if it was from joy or performance. Daniel's voice cracked once, which made a few women in the audience sigh. I didn't sigh. I just watched him. He didn't look happy. He looked contained, like a man in a room with no windows. After the vows, the party began. Lights dimmed, waiters refilled glasses, and the band struck up jazz covers of pop songs. Emma and Daniel shared their first dance to a slow acoustic version of Can't Help Falling in Love. Her head rested on his chest like she was posing for a magazine. Cameras flashed. Leo whispered, "Is she a princess now?" "No," I said quietly. "Just a bride." It wasn't until the second round of toasts that things began to slip. Emma took the microphone with a practiced smile. Her cheeks were flushed, and her voice carried easily through the sound system. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "I feel like the luckiest woman in the world. Today I got to live out a dream, my dream. To wear the dress, walk down the aisle, marry my best friend. People clapped. Daniel gave a tight-lipped smile. She continued, I know some people thought this day would never come. Some people, even in my own family, thought I wasn't the settling down type. She laughed. But look at me now. More polite laughter. Then she looked toward me. And I just want to take a moment to thank someone very special, my sister, Lina. I froze. She's been such a quiet inspiration, Emma said with a tilt of her head. She taught me things like what happens when you give your whole heart to someone who disappears before the baby even arrives. She grinned wider. Honestly, I owe her a lot. She showed me what not to do. Silence. For one brief second, I couldn't breathe. Someone laughed awkwardly. A few more joined in. Leo looked up at me with wide, confused eyes. I put my hand on his head. My palm was trembling. Emma wasn't done. Seriously, Lina, thank you. You reminded me that not everyone gets their fairy tale. But I guess I was just lucky. I stood slowly. Not to storm out, not to cause a scene, but to protect my son. I reached for Leo's hand. I was going to take him outside for air, for distance. But then a voice rang out from the center of the room. Clear, loud, female. Wow, it said. That was something. Every head turned. There, rising from her chair at table 4, was Chloe, Emma's best friend, her maid of honor. Part 3, Chloe's revelation. First, I thought Chloe was going to make a joke. She stood so gracefully, so confidently, that I assumed she'd try to spin Emma's cruelty into some light-hearted banter to steer the night back on track. But her eyes were cold. She wasn't smiling, and she was holding her phone. Emma, she said, her voice calm and sharp like the edge of a chilled knife. Since we're doing honest speeches tonight, why don't we tell the whole story? You love stories, don't you? The room hushed in that particular way people do when they sense danger but are too fascinated to look away. Emma blinked. Chloe, what are you? Don't interrupt, Chloe snapped. Emma froze. The music had stopped. One of the waiters was still holding a tray of champagne flutes mid-air, forgotten. Chloe lifted her phone slightly. Should I start with the messages? Or maybe the photos? Or wait, how about the video? You know the one. From the Flora Hotel, room 703. A collective gasp spread across the room like wind through dry grass. Daniel stood up so fast his chair scraped hard against the marble floor. What is she talking about? He asked, voice low, trembling. Emma opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again like a fish out of water. Chloe, that's not, I don't know what you think. You know exactly what I think, Chloe cut in, her voice breaking just slightly now, fury and heartbreak curling together like storm clouds. You're my best friend. You've been in my life for 10 years. I trusted you. You held my hand on my wedding day. You helped me write my vows. And while I was trying to save my marriage, she took a deep breath, you were in bed with my husband. No one made a sound. Chloe looked around the room, tears now streaking her perfect makeup. 6 years married, and she's been sleeping with him behind my back. And not just once. 3 weeks ago, after her wedding dress fitting, she met him at the Flora Hotel. I followed her. I waited. I took the photos. I've got proof. Do you want to see them? She held her phone higher. Emma looked pale, like all the blood had drained from her face. Chloe, please. But Chloe wasn't listening anymore. She turned to the guests, family members, college friends, Instagram acquaintances now frozen like statues. She's not who you think she is. She's not a princess. She's a liar. A homewrecker. And the saddest part? She would have stood here tonight and let me smile through it all. Let me toast to her fake fairy tale while she danced in the ashes of my life. Emma took one step forward, but Daniel stepped back. "Is it true?" he asked, barely audible. Emma didn't answer. So Chloe did. "She slept with my husband," she said again, louder this time. "The man sitting 2 rows behind the groom's parents. The one in the gray suit who didn't bother hiding the hickey on his collarbone." All eyes turned. The man looked down. Daniel looked like someone had shot him. "I thought you were different," he whispered to Emma. "I thought. God, I should have listened to my gut." Emma reached for his arm. "Daniel, please, let me explain." But he shook her off. "You already explained," he said bitterly. "Just not to me." He looked around like he couldn't breathe the same air anymore, then turned and walked out of the ballroom, not waiting for applause, not caring who watched. Emma stood there, stranded in a dress worth more than my rent for a year. The applause never came. Only silence. And in that silence, I did something I didn't expect. I stood up. Not to gloat. Not to scold her. But to leave. 'Cause Leo was gripping my hand tightly, eyes wide and confused, and this place, the chandelier-lit palace, the fantasy, was no place for a little boy to grow up in. "Come on, love," I said gently, brushing his curls back. "We're going home." He nodded, his voice small. "Is Aunt Emma in trouble?" I didn't answer. I just led him out of the ballroom, past the sea of stunned faces, the gasps, the half-hidden smirks, the guilt-ridden glances from people who had once looked down on me. We walked past the marble pillars and the valet stand, out into the cool night air where no one knew who we were. And as we stepped into the quiet street, Leo looked up at me again. "Mom." "Yes, baby. You looked really pretty tonight." I smiled, for real this time. "Thanks, sweetheart." "So did you." And just like that, the night ended. The masks had fallen. The fantasy had cracked. And the princess? She had no kingdom left to rule. Part 4, the aftermath. The morning after Emma's wedding felt like waking up after a hurricane. I didn't check social media. I didn't answer any texts. I didn't even make coffee. I just sat at the kitchen table while Leo spread jam too thick on his toast and told me about a dream he had involving a dinosaur and a lightsaber. Felt surreal, watching him giggle while the storm of the night before still echoed in my mind. The wedding was already a memory, blurry around the edges but sharp where it hurt. Emma's speech, Chloe's eruption, Daniel walking out, and the stillness in the room as everyone realized they just witnessed something realer than the wedding itself. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel angry. I just felt done. A few texts came in, of course. My mom, "Emma's devastated. She didn't mean it that way. You could have been more gracious." My dad, "Hope Leo wasn't too shaken up. Let's talk soon." Even a message from Chloe. "I'm sorry you had to witness that. I never wanted to hurt you or Leo. But I couldn't let her keep pretending." I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I packed up Leo's school lunch, kissed his forehead, and sent him off with a smile. Truth is, that wedding was never about me. It was about Emma, the image she crafted, the life she believed she deserved. I was just the shadow that reminded her of imperfection, of real choices, real consequences. She didn't mock me because she hated me. She mocked me because I made her uncomfortable, because I didn't pretend. But I wasn't going to carry her guilt anymore. Not after everything. That week, I kept my head low. I focused on work, took Leo to the park, read books at night instead of doom-scrolling through the wedding fallout. But even in silence, I could feel the ripple effect. People talked. Emma went quiet online, no selfies, no stories, no honeymoon pictures. Daniel disappeared too. Someone told me he moved out of the condo they shared. Chloe posted once, a quote on a black background that said, "The truth will set you free. But first it will shatter everything." No caption. Then 2 weeks later, Emma called. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. Her voice was hoarse. Hey. Hey. Silence. Then she said, I guess I owe you an apology. I waited. I was cruel. I was selfish. And you didn't deserve any of that. She exhaled, the sound heavy with something I didn't recognize in her, honesty, maybe. Or exhaustion. I was so busy chasing the perfect life that I didn't realize I was burning everything real around me. There was another pause. I don't know why I said those things about you, Lina. Maybe part of me was jealous that you could be a mom and still stand on your feet. Maybe I thought if I made you small, I'd feel bigger. It was ugly. I'm sorry. I looked out the window, watching the breeze play with the curtain. It's done, I said. You don't have to say anything else. She sniffled. Do you hate me? No, I said truthfully. But I don't admire you either. She didn't argue. And that, more than anything, told me she really was broken now. After that, we didn't talk much. She moved in with a friend, took time off work, went to therapy apparently. Chloe unfollowed her on everything. The friend group shattered like glass dropped from too high. Time passed. And with it, the sharpness of the memory dulled. But something else began to shift too. Me. I started sleeping better. I started walking taller. I started smiling more when people asked about Leo, not feeling the need to explain or defend myself. I even joined a tech conference in Seattle, my first real solo trip in years. That's where I saw Daniel again. I didn't recognize him at first. He had grown a beard and he looked thinner, like someone who'd left an old version of himself behind. He was standing by a coffee station, pouring too much cream into his cup, and I laughed when it spilled. He looked up. Our eyes met. His smile was tired but real. Lina. Hi. We didn't talk about Emma, not then. Not immediately. We just talked about work, the panel we both attended, how awful hotel coffee always was. Then we sat next to each other at the keynote speech. Then we walked the vendor hall together. Then we had dinner, just the two of us. By the third day, he said, I'm glad it fell apart. I raised an eyebrow. The wedding, he clarified. If it hadn't, I wouldn't be here. With you. I didn't respond. I just sipped my wine and let the quiet say what words couldn't. It wasn't love at first sight. It was something deeper. Something earned. Part 5, 2 years later. 2 years is a long time. Long enough for Emma to quietly fade from conversations. Long enough for Chloe to find new friends, new peace. Long enough for Leo to start 3rd grade and forget the wedding that once left him silent for a week. And long enough for Daniel and me to learn each other's rhythms. We never rushed. I wouldn't have let it happen any other way. After Seattle, we kept in touch. First, it was practical, sharing notes from panels, forwarding job leads, checking in on career shifts. But over time, the emails became calls. Calls became late-night conversations. Conversations became weekends. No declarations. No expectations. Just quiet understanding between two people who had seen enough of the world's lies to crave only truth. Daniel never once asked about Emma. He didn't need to. And I never asked if he still thought about that night, the wedding that never turned into a marriage. 'Cause I knew he did. Just as I did. Stayed with us, not as a wound, but as a scar. A reminder of the things we survived. The first time Daniel met Leo was over pizza. I'd warned him that Leo didn't like talking to adults much. He was a curious, cautious child, like me in many ways. But that night, Daniel knelt beside him and asked, So, do you think pineapple on pizza is a crime? Leo blinked, then whispered, Only if it touches the cheese. Daniel grinned. Fair enough. We'll do half and half. And just like that, something shifted. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but gently, like a door being left ajar. By the time Leo fell asleep on the couch, curled up next to Daniel's sweater, I realized I was no longer afraid of letting someone in, of trusting again. And that scared me more than anything, 'cause I had built my life around protecting myself from judgment, from betrayal, from disappointment. I had worn solitude like armor. And yet, here was Daniel, knocking quietly on the walls I had fortified for years. He never asked for permission to stay, but he never assumed he deserved to. He earned it. There were nights when I'd wake up in a sweat, reliving Emma's voice echoing through that ballroom, or hearing my own silence when I should have spoken up. And Daniel would be there, not to fix me, not to talk me down, but just to hold my hand and breathe with me until the world stopped spinning. There were days I doubted if I was enough for Leo, for myself, for anyone. And he'd say, "You don't have to be perfect to be real." I started to believe it. Little by little, love crept in, not as fireworks, not as fairy tales, but as soft mornings making pancakes, as Leo drawing us together in crayon with a shaky heart between our stick figure heads, as Sunday drives to nowhere, as silent companionship in the middle of a hard day. Daniel never tried to replace anything. He just showed up, over and over, until one day I looked across the kitchen table, Leo laughing at something on his tablet, Daniel flipping through a book with his reading glasses sliding down, and I realized, this is it. Not the story I planned, not the ending I once imagined, but the life I chose, the life that chose me back. Sometimes people ask if I've forgiven Emma. The answer is yes. And no. I've made peace with what happened. I understand her more now, how deep insecurity can rot someone from the inside. How the need to be loved, admired, worshipped can make a person cruel. I don't excuse it, but I don't carry it anymore either. Forgiveness isn't always a door you open. Sometimes it's just a bag you finally set down. Emma lives on the East Coast now. Last I heard, she's working with a startup. Single. Still beautiful. Still chasing something. I hope she finds it. As for Chloe, she and I aren't close. Too much pain between us, too many shadows. But we smile when we cross paths. And maybe that's enough. But Daniel, he stayed. And more than that, he grew. With me. With Leo. With his own wounded heart. 2 years later, we're not married. There's no ring, no official vow. But every night when Leo hugs him goodnight and calls him D, and Daniel kisses my forehead and says, "Sleep well, love," I realize vows can live in action, not just words. And that sometimes the most beautiful stories start in the wreckage of the ones we thought would define us.